Berserk, to me, is one of the best stories ever told. And if you haven't read it yet, this video really isn't for you. Because at its core, this video is a celebration of Kentaro Miura's masterpiece, and a dive into its main themes that make it so special and so important to so many people. Which is why people love it so much. Berserk is a story about love, pain, anger, and revenge. It's a story that delves deeply into the causes and effects of trauma, and it's a story that discusses succinctly the ideas of destiny and free will and focuses on the dreams and ambitions of its characters. Berserk is about overcoming adversity, never giving in, and finding your purpose. And through Berserk, Kentaro Miura created one of the most thought-provoking stories ever penned. And if I'm gonna put it bluntly, Berserk changed my life. I think the main reason Berserk is so special and what makes it so important is the themes that Kentaro Miura has melded into his story and woven through each and every one of his characters. For me, these themes break down into 4 categories: destiny, adversity, trauma, and finding purpose. Each of these follows Guts through his journey, and each of them help mold him to become the man that he is. Starting with throughout Berserk, destiny, or as it's called in the story, causality, is a key aspect to how the events of the story unfold. The general understanding is that everyone's lives, actions, and choices are already written. A man has no control even over his own will. Causality has attached itself to the main cast of Berserk, Griffith in particular. It wasn't by chance that he found the Behelit. It wasn't by chance that the Behelit returned to him. Griffith was groomed by causality to become a member of the God Hand, and this was always his path, and it was backed by his need to achieve his dream. The Band of the Hawk were always destined to be sacrificed. Femto was always meant to be born through the festival, just as the events had unfurled in times prior with Skull Knight, Zod, and Void. Because causality is also spiral-like in nature, where the events dictated by destiny are always going to happen, and are always destined to repeat. Except when it comes to Guts. Because Guts is a struggler. He's the struggler, and he is the person who struggles against causality. He's branded, destined to be sacrificed and to lose his soul to hell, and yet he survives. Guts is the epitome of the fight against destiny, the struggle for free will, the struggle to be free. He's the opposite of destiny. He's the one who can go against it. And this is what will be the eventual downfall of Griffith and the God Hand, something that they just could not have calculated for. If you're watching this channel, you probably like reading. And if you like reading, then you probably need things to read. Well, I've got just the site for you, Sci-Fire. Sci-Fire is an absolutely wonderful bookstore that specializes in sci-fi, fantasy, comic books, and of course, manga. I've been using them for absolutely ages because they not only have great pricing but also fantastic customer service and top-notch packaging. Like, look at this! If you want to use Sci-Fi yourself, you can head down to the link in the description and use the code NERDLOUNGE for 5% off every order. So get yourself some books, get yourself a discount, and support the channel at the same time. Back to the video. Guts is the struggler. He's faced almost insurmountable hardship throughout his life in the form of many different adversities. His physical strength has been tested, his mental fortitude pushed to the absolute limit. Guts has faced loss and grief and trauma, and yet he always pushed through. He struggles against every adversity and he doesn't let it beat him. Guts has drive and he has hope that things will get better, even in the face of his darkest moments. That is what Guts as a character has learned to do, and what Berserk endeavours to teach us as readers. No adversity is unbeatable. Take the tests of strength that Berserk puts forward. When we are first introduced to Nosferatu Zod, it is the first time we see an apostle as readers, and the first time the characters encounter one, and it's like nothing they have faced before. Prior to this point, Guts was a difficult man to beat, but This task seemed too much, and yet he did not falter. Guts faced an adversity and came through. He had learned during his time with the band and continued to learn throughout the whole story, becoming a force to be reckoned with. Guts acted in the same way during his face-off with Griffith before leaving the band. He had been bested before and he did nothing but look up to Griffith. So he trained and he got better. He wanted to become the equal to Griffith, to rise in the face of adversity. And when he did, he made it look easy. But strength is not the only challenge that Berserk forces its characters to overcome. Each character faces the adversity of their emotions. Griffith has his ambition, Casca has her inadequacy, Farnese has her enlightenment to the real world, and Guts has his rage. After the events of the eclipse, Guts is a man fueled only by hatred and the need for revenge. He is psychotic, murdering everything in his path, pushing away those that support him, and burying any form of positive emotion deep inside. Because he has to. Because he cannot face what actually happened. He doesn't know how to heal from it. And it is slowly breaking him. But his time with Godo teaches him that these small cracks in his sword, these small cracks in his self, will eventually lead the blade to dull and break. He has to fix these things first, not keep pushing forward. Guts overcomes the adversity of his hatred, and this culminates when he is reunited with Casca, and we see his pain and rage fade away to her. We see Guts grow because at its core, Berserk is a story about growth. He shackles the beast of darkness, it never quite leaves, and he grows. Even to the point where in the chapter Roar of the Sea, we see him finally accepting help back into his life. He reevaluates what is important, his friends and his love, and he accepts this is what he needs, despite thinking he could never have that again. Character growth is such an important part of Berserk's teachings. It teaches us how to let go in the face of adversity, even if it looks as though there is no other choice.
I like Berserk simply because it's fucking good. I mean, it has pretty much every single top mark I can think of. It has amazing characters, has amazing art. It's such a fearless story, willing to do quite literally anything to get its point across, whether it be from delving into the most disturbing material possible to giving you genuine humanity and hope. It's the kind of manga that can only be described as confident. It knows exactly what it's doing, even though in the beginning you could clearly tell it was stumbling around trying to find its own identity. Regardless, it is phenomenal. It's also the kind of manga that you will find your favorite metal album to listen to while you're reading it. I really like Converge and Wasp. Those are basically my unofficial Berserk soundtrack, though there's tons of other good bands you can listen to while reading it. And the point being that it is a phenomenal series that has so much under the surface, whether it just be from wanting grisly violence and death to something that's more warm and genuinely funny at times too. You can have cute moments in Berserk, you can have horrifying moments in Berserk, you can have heartfelt moments in Berserk. It covers every single part of the emotional spectrum, and that is something that is worth praising. It's unafraid to basically do whatever it wants, and some might call that mishmashy and not a consistent tone. I argue that Berserk knows exactly what it's doing with its tone, and it is unafraid to veer off at times when it knows it can get away with it. Sure, you can argue some bits are a little too over the top. Isidro and Puck especially became kind of the comedy duo of the manga, but I don't care, especially considering how a lot of those times they're just kind of baits for massive gut punches that hit you later. I mean, the ending of the Fantasia arc is basically paying off all that build-up that was coming in the earlier chapters, when it was all just cutesy, fun Fantasy Island stuff. It keeps you on your toes, and that's what I love most about it. You genuinely do not know what's coming next. It's fucking awesome. I love it. I love it to death. Cannot say enough about it.
The theme that Berserk delves deepest into and interprets in the greatest way is trauma. Pretty much every character in the story faces some sort of trauma. We see examples of sexual assault, religious indoctrination, and the traumatic experiences of loss stemming from the violence that enshrouds Berserk's world. Akin to the way adversity is portrayed, the message of Berserk is that trauma can be overcome. Guts struggles against trauma just as much as he does any other challenge in his life, but also shows immense growth through his trauma. Chapters 46 Section 47, named Wounds, are the perfect example of this. This is the moment that Guts and Casca finally bond, and it's their first opportunity for real, true intimacy. We see how fearful Casca is of this event and how she is scared that by opening up in a new way to Guts, she will change. She's afraid of the intimacy and how it will pull her away from her ambitions, the things that have driven her so far. And she's scared that her feelings aren't real, as she's become so used to hiding them. Yet Guts helps her through this. He guides her, helps her understand and come to terms with her wounds. But it's not only her wounds that are present in this moment. When Guts was a child, he faced the trauma of being betrayed by his father figure and sexually assaulted as a result of this. This, aided by the new feelings of intimacy with Casca, bring his traumatic memories flashing back. He sees Donovan, he sees his inner child, and he sees Gambino, and he lashes out. He hurts Casca and breaks down, revealing to her his past and the things that have happened to him. He is regretful of killing Gambino even after all this time, and absolutely terrified of what these actions have made him. Guts is truly scared of the product of his trauma and the way that it makes him act. And yet, Casca helps him through this. She guides him, helps him understand and come to terms with his wounds. Guts and Casca realise they are not defined by their trauma, and they also don't have to face it alone. It's a moment of purity in Berserk, a culmination of growth between two deeply troubled characters. It is the moment that they become truly entwined, the moment they fell truly in love. Wounds offers a deep exploration of Guts and Casca's trauma stemming from their young life, but the following events of the manga thrust them into a much more traumatic experience: the Eclipse. The Eclipse is the culmination of the first arc of Berserk, the culmination of the prequel and build-up of the series. It results in Guts watching all his friends, his found family, be brutally murdered by the command of his friend and leader, Griffith. And further to this, it's the moment where Casca is sexually assaulted, destroying her mentality and throwing her into a traumatic state, which she resides in for the vast majority of the manga. The Eclipse forces Berserk into a different depiction of trauma and PTSD, one that is not so easy to heal from. Guts and Casca have lost their support structure in each other. They have been stripped of everything they worked towards and all their growth as characters. Casca retreats into herself, on the outside becoming a shell. She was sexually assaulted and then, as a result, lost her baby. She depicts the after effects of PTSD at its most extreme. And Guts becomes lost in rage and revenge. He loses his emotional connection to himself and others, fueled only by anger, and over time this anger overtakes him, creating the Beast of Darkness. The Beast of Darkness is a metaphysical presence for Guts, depicting his inner demon fueled by his trauma. It is enchained, barely held down, and if it's released, it will change who Guts has become. It's very powerful imagery, reflecting the darkest parts of trauma. Berserk depicts trauma so powerfully, but to me, the most important message of Berserk is a mixture of all the things I've talked about so far, because the most important message of Berserk is Guts' story from the very beginning has been about finding his purpose in the world. Some of the most monumental chapters are about this, like Bonfire of Dreams. This chapter is truly the start of Guts' journey. He is surrounded by the Band of the Hawk, a group driven by one man's dream, but who each have their own lives, wants, and dreams. Guts sees this as a bonfire of dreams, a collection of everyone's consciousness emanating out into the night. But Guts feels like he's not a part of that. He doesn't know what he wants. He's just a temporary visitor, taking comfort from the flame of the fire. So he decides to leave the band to set out and find his purpose. This search for purpose is also driven by Griffith and Guts' admiration of him. Griffith shines the brightest of anyone that Guts has met, and he is also the most driven. He will stop at nothing to achieve his purpose, his dream, and Guts aspires to have the same ideology, to be seen as Griffith's equal. So he leaves. He leaves them to grow. Guts begins to understand his purpose through his time with Godo. Godo describes the sparks to him, the light that emanates from metal on metal, which drives Godo to create, to be a blacksmith. And Guts realizes he is also drawn to this, that in the moment where swords clash and sparks fly, he feels most alive. So he commits his life to his sword, to fighting enemies and becoming strong. He wants to fight for himself, not for others. Guts believes he has found his purpose, and then that is taken away. After the events of the eclipse, Guts' purpose changes. He becomes driven by his need for revenge, his need to kill. He hunts apostles in his quest to find Griffith, but he forgets himself along the way. Berserk here teaches us that you can be misguided by your purpose. You can think that you want something and do everything in your power to achieve it, but it wasn't truly what you were looking for. The real message of Berserk and the real purpose that Guts was looking for is that of companionship. Guts' true purpose is to care for the people around him, to protect them. He knows he must protect Casca at any cost, and he knows that he cannot do so alone. His purpose becomes entwined with others, a found family, and Guts realizes that it is all he has wanted, and that he thought he'd never have it again. There's so much talk in Berserk about dreams and impossible goals. There's talks of causality and free will and the idea of evil, but as simple as it may seem, the message is that of love. There is purpose in love, in regaining love that you have lost, in caring for others and having compassion. There is purpose in letting go of your rage, of your darkness, and submitting to your heart. So Guts finds a family and he aims to bring Casca back, and they do. But as always with Berserk, there is just another challenge around the corner. It's all well and good explaining the importance of Berserk and the messages that it strives and succeeds to put across, but I haven't talked about exactly how this story changed my life. I came to read Berserk at a time where I wasn't sure who I was, who I wanted to be, or where I was going. I'd just had the hardest year of my life, spending the whole of 2020 near death with tuberculosis. I wasn't enjoying my job, and I felt like I was rushing into the future with no real understanding as to why. And I had some big changes. I moved into my first home and I split up with my long-term partner. Everything was moving really fast and looking a lot scarier than before. And I felt as though maybe I couldn't do this. Why was I pushing forward? What was my purpose? Then I read Berserk, a story about hope in spite of everything, a story about finding your purpose and chasing your dreams. It was inspiring, and it kept on being so reflective of my mental state. It was as though I read the chapters exactly when I needed to. If I was unsure of something, Berserk helped me push for that decision. And when I felt like I was losing everything, Berserk gave me chapters like Requiem of the Wind. That's a chapter that I remember so vividly, with the quote, "Only the wind announced the end of the fight." It's a chapter of hopelessness, but it has this somber calm to it, because whilst the end of the fight is an end in itself, it also brings peace. Obviously, not so much in Berserk, but the sentiment is the same. Berserk helped me think about my mindset, about what drives me. It helped me reflect on my trauma and strive to be better. It didn't save my life, but it definitely played a part in making sure I was steered on the right path. And Berserk told me that you're going to be alright. I'm sure you'll overcome this. You'll walk again. And there's one more thing, this video. Ever since I read Berserk, this video has been on my mind. A video that means so much to me. And it's always been my goal to release it in an amazing way. I thought today would be a perfect day to do it, but I was always pushing myself to be big enough to release this video. Berserk gave me a purpose to keep pushing on with this channel, to keep pursuing my passion. And I hope this video unlocks a new path for me to talk more about the series that I love with people that love it just as much as I do. Thank you, Miura, for creating something so profound and meaningful. Thank you for all the lives you have affected in all the amazing ways that you've affected them with your work, and thank you for creating a true masterpiece. I hope you're at peace now, but you'll never be forgotten. Thank you for changing my life.